do something a different way, we're going to be open to that.
To which critics have responded largely in one of two ways. Either to say, well, of course none of this is 100% firm. None of it ever was, because it was never realistic to think that the U.S. could negotiate even a single trade deal in a matter of weeks, never mind holding talks with the whole world.
There's a difference between agreements that kick the can and agreements that actually solve problems.
Trade deals are hundreds of pages long, they're detailed, and they take years to hash out.
But the other reaction has been to say, I guess every day is Taco Tuesday.
Trump always keeps a good job. It is an acronym that today got a lot of talk on Wall Street. That's when Wall Street got to What's your response to that?
I kick out?
Chicken out.
Oh, isn't that nice? Chicken out. I've never heard that.
Yeah, so it turned into a thing. There's even a Wikipedia page about it. And what has reinforced this notion that Trump frequently backs down from his most extreme policies, and why stock markets appear to believe that there's no reason to freak out, is that the bar for what qualifies as a deal that pushes Trump off his partisan positions is lower than you think.
President's phone, I can tell you, rings off the hook from world leaders all the time who are begging him to come to a deal.
In the next 24 hours, we'll be here swearing a deal. We gotta have a lot of but the deals are mostly binding up to them.
So I'll be honest, I don't really know how to interpret Trump's comment, because it sounds like he's saying he thinks of basically anything he does to another country as being a kind of
The deals are mostly binding up to them.
but even the specific deals that he has reached that have led to the U.S. backing down on some of its tariffs. Well, for starters, there are only these two right now, one with the UK and one with Vietnam. And the deal with the UK isn't so much a trade agreement as it is setting a table. It deals primarily in intentions to end trade and commitments to work towards some kind of negotiated outcome. But there are really very few settled details. There is, for example, a reduction in U.S. tariffs on British cars. But even the earlier framework Trump's most recent executive order references has additional detail, comes with a broad disclaimer that both the United States and the United Kingdom recognize that this document does not constitute a legally binding agreement. Translation, there's still a lot of work to be done.
The UK agreement only made concessions on a handful of items, and it was essentially an agreement to talk about those items. So if you define the deal as bringing down a large complex relationship to a few key items and agreeing to talk about those items in the future, we intend to try and get the tariff down to X% in the future, then yes.
And the only real evidence we have right now of a deal with Vietnam is this post on Truth Social, where Trump simply says that he's just made a trade deal with Vietnam involving 20% U.S. tariffs on incoming Vietnamese goods in exchange for total access to Vietnamese markets, which Trump claims zero tariffs on U.S. goods. But is there any sign of an actual agreement between these two countries? Any details about how any of this will work? No, because neither the U.S. nor Vietnam has released anything to that.
Well, we have nothing. People didn't misunderstand the agreement. The American understanding and nothing to say. All the United States has to go on is what Trump said. There's some degree of suspicion that it's more complicated.
Now, none of this is to say that fruitful deals for the U.S. aren't coming, but as every expert told us, these things take time, and it all goes some way to explaining why not everybody expects Trump's threats to continue. Now, it's important to make room for what Trump claims is actually just how you get deals done, like how, yes, he paused his sweeping liberation of tariffs, but really to be able to continue using them as a threat, which is leverage.
We have an end date of July 9th. You call that chickening out?
Now, okay, we July 9th wasn't exactly a hard end date. Since extended to August 1st. But the point stands. What critics call chickening out could actually be the opposite, which is applying pressure.
It's called negotiation. You set a number. And if you go down, if I set a number at a ridiculous high number and I go down a little bit, a little bit.
So we know from negotiation research, right, that anchoring is powerfully successful in shifting where outcomes happen. And in that sense, we can make credit President Trump.
Here is the public, his counterparty, he negotiates with the entire world for the maximalist position. So if you can actually get through the public and the counterparty, something that in a previous negotiating period or in previous times would have been seen as really, really difficult to achieve.
So maybe this is just like putting the screws to someone else. It keeps trade partners off balance. It reminds them constantly and perpetually of how close to trade oblivion they are if they fail to appease the United States. And let's not forget, many of Trump's tariffs do stick. Canada, for example, still faces sectoral tariffs of up to 50% on cars, steel, and aluminum. And combined with tariffs to come, Trump's Treasury Secretary believes they will raise more than $300 billion just by the end of this year. But one potential cost of that is credibility.
The downside is, at some point, if they don't, meet your red line, you're put in the position of either making good on that threat or not making good on that threat. And to the extent you don't make good on that threat, people start to learn your patterns.
The other element is any deal with Trump is, in essence, a handshake deal. There's no guarantee that he's going to honor the agreement.
Is it worthwhile cutting a deal in the United States if you can't count on it sticking and being the deal? In other words, are you going to move the goalpost? And the U.S. answer to that so far is yes, we might do that.
But here's the thing. While this does create a whole heck of a lot of uncertainty for anyone trying to navigate very volatile trade unions, Trump is resurrecting his most maximalist and punishing trade wars with the threat of astronomical tariffs. But apparently, at least for now, without inciting the kind of market panic that occurred the last time. What was extreme just a couple of months ago elicits hardly any reaction at all today. That's a magic trick no other U.S. president in recent memory